myself, but you guys aren't getting recorded on the call. So remember we're using factoring to solve the equation. So like really the first part is nothing that you haven't already been doing with the classwork for the first couple days. We're gonna, first of all, the thing you gotta remember is they have to be equal to 0, first of all. And, but you're only gonna focus on this side of it. So if that were just a regular old polynomial, and I just asked you to factor it. The very, very first thing you would do, of course, is, if we're looking at our little list, you would do the greatest common factor, right? So this one doesn't have a greatest common factor. So then what's my question number 2?
Is it quadratic?
Okay. Yep, but it'll make it even easier for you. Yes, you do need to see if it's quadratic, but it would be even easier if you look to see if it's special first. Like I would, like quadratic, yes, you can skip there, but let's check and see if it's special first.
It is.
It is, right? Yep, because you got a 7v, 7v. And then this one has a 6 and a 6. And it's got subtraction there in the middle. So that tells you that it's special. So all you have to do, this one's the easy one. So you just pop open those binomials. The 7w, or I don't know what I said, w, 7v goes there and there. And then it becomes plus 6 and minus 6. So the first part where you factor it is just like you've been doing. You're going to ask yourself the same questions about whether you got a GCF, whether it's quadratic, special, grouping, all of that. The extra step comes because you're actually solving them this time. And obviously either this needs to be equal to 0 or that needs to be equal to 0, because 0 times something is how you're going to get that 0 right there. So that's why another...
And like, okay, so once you put the 7v plus 6 and 7v minus 6 in parentheses, you have to put the equal 0 at the end?
Exactly, yeah, that equation, yeah. And that's how you can tell the difference between the homework you've been doing for the last couple of days, where it was just expressions, they didn't have equations, there were no equal signs, and then versus the classwork, Friday classwork, they're equations. So now you know that either this needs to be equal to 0, or you know that that needs to be equal to 0. So you're going to set up 2 equations. You're going to set up 7v plus 6 is equal to 0. And then 7v minus 6 is equal to 0. Because one of these 2 parentheses...
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I can. So I'm going to take those 2, each of those binomials that I got by factoring, and I'm going to make 2 equations out of them. One of them, I'm going to do 7v plus 6 is equal to 0. So you just take that first binomial, then you take the second binomial, the 7v minus 6, and set it equal to 0. So now you've got 2 equations that you need to solve. And then you just solve them like regular old equations. So you isolate your variable. So you subtract 6 on each side. And that leaves you with 7v is equal to negative 6. And divide both sides by 7 so that v is equal to negative 6 over 7. Because remember, we don't want to divide it into a mixed number or a decimal. In algebra, we like fractions. And then for this one, we do the same thing. We just isolate the v, so we add 6 to both sides. So it'll be 7v is equal to 6. And divide both sides by 7. So you've got v is equal to negative 6 over 7, and then equal to positive 6 over 7.
Okay, Ms. Popelka, another question I have.
And so, yeah, because the form's kind of picky, you know, for the self-check to work. So you're going to do, you know, those little brackets that I can't draw? Yeah, so you need to do that. And then you need to do the lower number first, comma, higher number second, and then bracket that I can't draw.
Okay, 1 second. Let me try that. And then just
You should have made it multiple choice.
No, because first thing you need to look for.
greatest common factor.
Yes, and is there a greatest common factor?
No.
Nope. Okay, so we don't have a GCF. So what's the next thing you need to look for?
Is it special?
Yep. Is it special?
No.
Nope, we don't have perfect squares on either side. So now what do we need to do?
Is it do AC method?
You are going to have to do the AC method. How come?
I have no idea. I just.
Because A isn't equal to 1. If A is equal to 1, you can just pop it open and drop them in there, like from the chart. But since A is not equal to 1, you got to do AC, right? So we need to figure out what are we going to, so A times C, so 3 times 14 is 42? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you multiply to get 42 that you're going to add to get negative 23? So give me some factors of 42.
21 and negative 2.
Negative, oh, look at you. Negative 21 and negative 2, right, because a negative times a negative will give you that positive 42 that you want. And then if you add a negative 21 plus a negative 2, that adds up to the negative 23 that you want. So do you remember what you do with that negative 21 and that negative 2?
Don't you break up the negative 23b?
You sure do. So you're going to use those two numbers to break that 23b apart into negative 21b and negative 2b. And then we're just going to bring the rest down. So plus 14. Okay, I know that is equal to 0 is there, but I'm just not doing anything with it yet. Okay, so what was the point of taking that trinomial and turning it into 4 terms now?
So you can find a greatest common factor. Yeah.
Exactly. So, greatest common factor or factoring by grouping. So I'm going to group those two together, and what am I going to factor out of those two?
3. Or could you do negative 3?
I could do negative 3. I'll tell you what. I'll show you what. The only reason I'm not. Oh yeah, actually, negative 3 would work. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, what else? Is that all I can factor out of that first one?
No. Miss Pocopo,
Yeah.
you're really glitchy right now.
What? I'm really what?
Glitchy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, it's just fuzzy.
Okay. So I thought you said the B word for a minute. I was like, what? Oh my God. I was like, Ethan. Okay. So after you factor out that 3B, what are you going to have in that first group?
Then you're gonna have negative B.
And what about 21 divided by 3?
7 plus 7.
Mm-hmm. And then what am I going to factor out of this one?
Negative 2. Or 2, negative 2, I guess.
Well, so if you do factor out a negative 2, see how that negative is going to get you a positive B?
Yeah.
And you've got a negative B already, so just factor out a 2.
Okay.
And then what'll you have left when you get that?
Negative B plus 7.
Okay. Yep. So you know you're on the right track because you've got, these are the same. So you're going to factor those out. So right, the negative B plus 7 becomes 1 binomial. And then the negative 3B plus 2 becomes the other binomial. So are we cool so far with how we got that factored?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now to solve it, Because again, we're not just factoring these, we're actually solving them. So either this has to equal 0 or that has to equal 0. One of those two binomials has to equal 0. So I'm going to set up two equations. One of them will be this first one, so negative b plus 7 is equal to 0. And then the other one will be negative 3b plus 2 is equal to 0. And I kind of haven't given myself a lot of room here, so I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to rewrite them over here in like purple where I got a little bit more room. So negative b plus 7 is equal to 0. I'll solve that one first. So you just isolate your b. So negative b is equal to negative 7. And remember, you can't leave it as just a negative b. So you had to divide both sides by negative 1. And then the other one was, what, negative 3b plus 2 is equal to 0. So you subtract 2 from both sides. Divide both sides by negative 3. So b, this one was doing a lot. b is equal to 2 over 3. Right, because those two negatives cancel to be a positive. So when you go to type it into the spreadsheet, make sure you do the bracket and then the 2/3 first since it's smaller, and then the 7 second. Do you want to try that?
What did you say?
Did you want to try it for a second to type it in there and see if it works?